have 11:05, so I think we'll go ahead and we'll get started, and hopefully, as others come in, they can just go ahead and join us from wherever they come in. So good morning, I'm Ariel Clifton. I am with GCC and the STEM Connect team, and we have a number of guest presenters. I have also our director for STEM Connect on with us, Elena Beltran.
Hi, I'm Elaine Beltran, and I'm the director for STEM Connect here at GCC.
Okay. And we have with us from HE Still, Scott Edwards.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. From Midwestern, I believe we have Liz Miller and Jeff, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Jeff Dow.
Yes. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
And from UA, we have Rachel Mickle and Chip Young.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you.
Good morning, everyone.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we'll just follow that same order, which is actually just alpha. So we'll start off with each of the presenters, each school and program that's being represented, having a few minutes to talk about their school and their school's program. So we'll go ahead and start out with Scott Edward from HE Still.
All right, thank you. I'll just jump right into it with admissions from HE Still University, and we are the founding DO school in America. We've been around for over 125 years, since 1892. And we've got, let me try to share my screen here with you. See, is everybody able to see that?
No, I may need to change your role.
Well, that's okay. We don't have to do a presentation. We'll do it the good old-fashioned way. So our founding campus is in Kirksville, Missouri, but we also have a campus here in Phoenix, in the Phoenix area, in the Mesa suburb in the East Valley. So what is a DO? So a lot of people still have questions about that. Sometimes the best way to answer that is to tell our story about Dr. Still, who we're named after. Andrew Taylor Still was an MD, and then he lost 3 of his own kids to disease. And this obviously really shook him up. He disappeared for about a year as he was doing some reflection. And he determined what he was doing wrong was he was focusing too much on the symptoms. So he came back with a lot of new ideas and a new passion to want to start a new school on how to train student doctors to look at the whole person. He realized that had he taken a step back and looked at his 3 daughters holistically, he would have determined that what was killing them was a result of something else. So he wanted to start a new school, but in America, you can't just say, hey, I got a new way of being a doctor. Come to my school. Sign up. We'll cure people. It'll be great. It's a long, terrible process that requires an act of Congress. And that's what he had to do. He had to actually convince the Congress from the 1800s that we needed a new way of being a doctor and a physician. Rather than an allopathic MD, which was what he was, he started teaching student doctors to be osteopathic DOs, osteopathic doctors. So our founding campus is still in Missouri. That's a 2-year program. On campus, 2 years of rotations, a 4-year program. The one in Mesa is also a 4-year program, but what's unique about Mesa is there's only 1 year in the Mesa campus. We're the only med school in the country that sends you to your rotation site in your 2nd year. So you actually get 3 years of rotations. You still complete your 2nd year coursework, but you do it at your rotation site with your cohort, with your regional director of medical education. That's your RDME. They will remain as your instructor for your med skills, but the remainder of your lectures will be done through podcasts. But your labs will all be done at the Mesa campus in that 1st year. So now that you got a whole extra year of rotations, your confidence level is much higher than those that are coming in on their 3rd year. We have rotation sites all across America, from Hawaii to New York. And rather than in your second year memorizing flashcards on campus, you'll be thinking about the experience that you had with Mr. Jones, who was suffering from certain side effects from a prescription drug. And you'll be able to answer those questions. That's why we believe that we score way above national average on standardized test scores. Not that we believe standardized tests make better doctors, right? But we do know that that's what translates into your residency. Your residency do care about your test scores, so that's why we care about test scores. So we have a 100% match rate for residency, which is what we're mostly proud of. In Mesa, you have all the resources available to you for learning disabilities or learning differences. We have coaching, we have advisement, we have all the clubs and organizations you can imagine, and if they're not there, you could start one. We have a YMCA on campus, which every student has a free membership to, and that is for your wellness, as well as mental health wellness. We have counselors on campus for you as well. Right now, we are starting off slow with lectures going on podcasts while we're still dealing with the virus, but students are allowed to come in small groups at a time to conduct labs. Otherwise, I'm here to help. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I apologize if I set up the center to share. I apologize for missing that step earlier.
No problem.
Okay, so next up would be Midwestern, which is Liz Miller and Jeff Dow.
All right. Hi. Good morning. So Jeff and I are going to kind of go over a couple of interview or overall ASCOM information. So we'll kind of talk about who we are. We'll kind of give you an idea of what the schedule looks like, and just a little bit of the admission requirements as well. So to begin, so we actually have two campuses, one here in Glendale, Arizona, known as ASCOM, and then we have our sister campus in Downers Grove, Illinois, known as CCOM. So you'll find both of us on the application service, but at that point it's treated as two separate applications. Just speaking about us in Arizona, we're a 4-year program, so 2 years of didactic and lab work on our campus, and then 2 years of clinical rotation. We're on a quarter system as well, so we have about 10 weeks in our quarters, averaging about 18 credit hours. So again, the first 2 years are your basic sciences, so those are all taught on our campus, and this is of course pre-COVID. With COVID, it looks a little different, but we can address that if you guys have any questions. And then the third and fourth year are our rotation. We do fill a class of roughly around 253 students, so quite large, as we're somewhat of a smaller campus. A lot of our students are Arizona residents, so we see about 26th percentile of Arizona. But being a private institution, tuition is the same, whether you're in-state or out-of-state, so there's no weight varied from that. On average, our student age is roughly around 25 years old. So I'll pass it off to Jess.
Awesome. So with our curriculum, we are an osteopathic school as well. And so we do incorporate about 3 to 4 quarters of that in your first year, so you get a lot of hands-on training. With COVID, we have done some integration to cut down some of the classes, so it'll be a hybrid schedule, but students still seem to be able to get the training they need. We also have a lot of hospitals around the area with Arizona, California, Chicago, and then our students in our fourth year can also go to other states. We've been able to find enough hospitals to give them the training hands-on wise that they need to graduate. And then our match stats are also pretty well We usually match about 98 to 100% for our students, and then our board pass rate is about 95.8%. So we're pretty good at readjusting our curriculum, especially with the merger, to make sure that students get the education they need to match well and also perform well on rotation. But yes, any other questions, we can definitely answer at the end and provide our contact info.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. And then next we have from University of Arizona, Rachel Mickle and Chip Young.
Good morning, everybody. So excited to see you all here. Just wanted to quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Rachel Mickle, like we said, and both my colleague, his name is Chip, but it looks like Joseph on here. We're both first-generation students. We're excited to be able to share a little bit more about our school. As mentioned, we are with the University of Arizona, but we are with the College of Medicine Phoenix. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. Chip, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Chip Young. We both work in the admissions and recruitment department with the University of Arizona College of Medicine Phoenix. We work specifically with our undergraduates and our high school students in our pipeline programs, helping them find that path to medicine. So we're really excited to be here and help you guys get any of the questions you might have answered.
Absolutely. And we're actually going to have some tabling opportunities at the end of this. So we'll actually drop our Zoom link into the chat. And that's actually where we would like to spend the most of our time, just because we know it's easy to kind of just share a spiel with you all. But what we would really like to do is really get to meet you, answer your questions directly, and really connect with where you're at in the process, because we know that this is a journey and we're all on different kind of pathways to that too. So that's what we really want to focus on today, but we will really quickly answer some of the kind of FAQs about our program and our campus as well. So Chip, would you share a little bit about just kind of what you can expect on the Phoenix Biomedical campus?
Yeah, so with our campus, we're a little unique. We share our campus with a couple of U of A programs, U of A Nursing, Pharmacy, College of Public Health. We also have the College of Business, yes, Eller Business School, and then we also have NAU programs on our campus as well. So NAU has physician's assistant, athletic training, physical therapy, occupational therapy. There's one more in there that I'm missing, but yeah, we do share the campus. That's not our school.
That's okay.
Yeah, we share the campus with multiple disciplines, which makes us very unique, especially since there's multiple different universities as well. And in our curriculum, our students are able to work in. They have an interdisciplinary curriculum built in, and so they have the opportunity to work all of these different programs throughout their 4 years in medical school. Just like the other two schools were saying, we do have two separate medical schools. So the University of Arizona has a College of Medicine in Tucson, and then we have our College of Medicine in Phoenix. So if you were to apply to our campuses, you would apply to both of those schools separately. And we do have different requirements and different curriculum to go along with that as well. What else?
Well, as you mentioned, we are separate from the College of Medicine Tucson, so we do have different requirements. But one thing I also wanted to point out too is that we are an allopathic school, so we are an MD school, and that is what kind of sets us apart from the other schools that are represented here. Not better or worse, but that is one thing that you might want to consider as you're looking towards the field of medicine. Is what is it that draws you to medicine, and is that really the field that you want to go into? Because a lot of times you can make just as much of a difference as a nurse, as a physical therapist, any of these different fields that we've mentioned. And so what we hope to accomplish today is really being able to connect you to what that pathway actually looks like, what you can do with an MD degree, and what really that future would look like if you're trying to get from where you currently are in community college at Glendale, to that pathway and beyond. So we definitely would ask you, if you have any questions, you can definitely send them in the chat. I actually see one from Alexandria, which is great. And she just asked about what our acceptance rates are for each school. So that's a fantastic question. And that actually kind of leads into where we'll head next. Chip, are you able to share your screen at this point?
Let me see.
Give us just one quick second, guys.
While you're doing that, there was another question in the chat about, can you tell us more about PMAP at the U of A Tucson campus?
Yeah, so Chip and I both represent the College of Medicine Phoenix, so we can't speak as official representatives of Tucson, but we actually have a program that is functionally basically identical to that in Phoenix. So that's what we would encourage you to look into, considering you're much closer. Now, of course, you could apply to both. That's totally up to you. But the Phoenix version is called the Pathway Scholars Program, and I would love to answer more questions about that kind of in that one-on-one environment as we're tabling. So the Pathway Scholars Program, though, is a year-long program that actually comes before you would enter into medical school. We only accept about 10 students into that program every year, but once you're in that program, you get a solid foundation of mentoring, you actually do classes alongside people in the traditional MD program. But the beauty of it is that you get this amazing foundation, and also a lot of the costs are subsidized, which is great. And once you're in that program and you complete it successfully, not only do you get a master's in medical studies, but you're also guaranteed admission into the MD program. And so I am a huge fan of the Pathway Scholars Program. I will tell it until I'm blue in the face. And so would love to answer more questions about that soon. So that's the Phoenix equivalent of the PNAP program.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, of course. All right, thanks so much, Chip, for pulling up that that slide as well. Can you go to the next one?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to go to the next slide.
No problem. There's like a little arrows on the left-hand side, I think, that you can click down and up.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
I only know this by trial and error.
Yeah, okay. So some of the academic requirements that we have with our medical school, we do require a 3.0 GPA. The average GPA that we have for our incoming class is a 3.7. And their science GPA, again, we're looking at a 3.0, but the average is 3.6. The Mcat score, the minimum requirement that we look for is a 495. With our most recent class that just started 2 weeks ago, the average was a 514. So that Mcat score has slowly crept up each year, but we do have anywhere from a 497 all the way up to like a 526 in our course requirements that we have. The ones that really stand out for us are biochemistry. You do have to have a semester of biochemistry under your belt, any additional chemistry as well. And then we are going to look for human or mammalian physiology, very specific. It cannot be like plant physiology or anything like that. We are looking for human or mammalian physiology, and human anatomy and physiology will also work to fit that requirement.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw in a quick comment in there really fast, if that's okay. Sorry to interrupt. One thing that Chip and I will definitely tell you all the time is that community college is the place to get these prerequisite courses. So the most of the other classes that we require are really foundational courses, like, sociology, psychology, kind of those social sciences, humanities. You can get all of those at Glendale. And I think that that is something that we really want to emphasize, is that this is the place right now to be taking your prerequisite courses for medical school. So even if you plan on going, to another university or transferring out, that's totally fine, but get them under your belt now. Start thinking about planning out your future from where you're at right now, because what you're doing in this moment is counting towards medical school. So that's all I have to say there.
Yeah. All right.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for that intro from all of you. I believe what we're hoping to go into now, we do have some, for the students that are on the call, we do have some general questions for each of the schools to go over that will cover some of these questions that you may have about some of the particulars of the process of applying to med school, some of those things, that's great that you guys already kind of fed into that, because that is one of our questions about some of the scores for the MCAT, TPAs, for acceptance, those kinds of things. So we'll go ahead and dive into some of those standardized questions, and then we'll open that up afterwards for any student questions that you may have. And I just wanted to real quick point out, we are reading the chats, so if you do have a question, please feel free to add it to the chat, and Ms. Ariel and I will make sure that we field those questions to the right representatives. So Ms. Ariel, if you want to go ahead and get started with our frequently asked questions, that way we can give a chance to everybody to answer some of that information.
Sure. So the first question, and we'll go around like we did before, starting with AT Still, then Midwestern and UA. Could you each summarize the application process and what applicants should expect?
Yeah, great question. So you're going to want to begin through a COMAS, that's AACOMAS, that's for osteopathic medicine schools. It's a centralized application server, so you can apply to several schools from one location. You don't have to have all of your courses completed, so the application process is over a year long as we fill seats and conduct interviews. It's a lengthy process, so we understand if you have a course that you still need to complete. So continue to completing your prerequisites through the application process. We'll continue interviewing and accepting as we go along. What we're looking for is students, you know, that share the same passions as we do and share the same interests that we do. So, for example, like I said, we send our students to community health centers. I don't know if I mentioned that before actually, but community health centers are basically free public clinics. Our passion is primary care. That doesn't mean you're limited to primary care if you come to our school. A lot of people don't know that primary care does have several specialties. Sometimes they think it's just family medicine, but it also includes internal medicine, women and infant children, general surgery, emergency, and mental health. So those are the applicants we're trying to attract on the front end, are ones that share our passions. And like I said, we're the first DO school, so you're not required to shadow a DO. You're not required to even get a letter of recommendation from a DO, but we hope you do, because we hope that you share our passions and our interests. So shadowing experience, healthcare experience, and of course, you know, any kind of healthcare experience, but service is really important to us as well. So service includes, you know, not just volunteering at a hospital. It really determines on what population are you serving. That population should be an underserved population. So we're not really that impressed with fundraising or campaigns or getting the message or participating at a walk-on. So those are great. Feel free, you got to include everything in your application, and that's still going to tell us who you are. But we're really interested in applicants that have a history of service, shadowing, and you're going to want to, in that application process, you'll want to include your letters of recommendations, all your experiences, all your services, and your shadowing experiences. And then we'll send you a secondary application, and we'll move on with the interview process.
And some of that actually ties into our next question about helping students to be more competitive in the application process. So right now we're on the question, though, about summarizing the application process and what applicants should expect, and then Midwestern Europe next.
Okay, so I'll kind of go over the application process, and Jess will kind of touch on some of the statistics. But just like Scott said, so you'll apply through a COMAS. Typically, a COMAS application will open in May. For us, we like that you apply sooner rather than later, because we are on a rolling basis. So with that, you know, get your application soon, and then it's under review, and then we start interviewing sometime in September. We do a secondary application as well. So we do look briefly at the GPA and Mcat. But as far as the requirements for the prerequisites, just make sure that you completed those prior to matriculating. So the fact that if you're still working on some of those prereqs, that's fine. Again, they just have to be done prior to starting the program in August. And then let's see, as far as letters of recommendation, we do like that you had one either from an MD or a DO. We do like to see also that you have one from a science faculty, somebody that you've built rapport with over the span of your academics is really what we're looking for, somebody that can vouch for your work ethic and kind of touch on some of those characteristics and values that you carry. We also like that, let's see, at least a 2.75 more competitive, kind of Jess will touch on with GPA. But just make sure that you've hit all of your prerequisites. That's it, Jess?
And then as far as our stats, so our average accepted stats for the past class was a 3.48 science GPA and a 3.54 overall GPA with an MCAT of a 508. Our student population is about 66% male, 34% female, and then 26% of the students are from Arizona, and then the rest are from out of state. So we are private. There is no in-state, out-of-state tuition. It's the same across the board. And we take international and U.S. Applicants as well. And the application process is the same for all students. And then our class size is about 253. And we interview about 950 students.
Okay.
So I do have one really quick follow-up question to that. As students are thinking about applying and getting themselves prepared for that process, if a student were to, let's say, have an F grade or even a D grade in any of their science classes, would you recommend that that student repeat that course in order to bring that grade up, or is that factored into the GPA? Do you factor all of the science grades together when you're looking at that GPA, or do you take it as a cumulative, which would then that would be the recommendation, is to have a student repeat that class?
We kind of look at it overall. So yes, anything that students get, anything below a C minus in, definitely repeat those specifically with sciences so that it could boost the science GPA. And then we are a little bit more stricter on the prereqs. The prereqs for certain have to have a C minus or above to be considered. And then anything else repeated will just be an enhancement to the GPA.
And Elena, too, ACOMAS does all the calculations. So when students go to apply, have all of your transcripts sent to them. And what they do is the calculations for all of us in the institution side. So everything then is averaged together. They don't do grade replacement or grade forgiveness. So there's different verbiage with that, but it's all average. So yeah, just like Jess said, anything below would be recommended to retake. And then at that point, it shows the committee, you know, that you understand the content and you have a good foundation for med school.
Awesome.
I would also just jump into, we're very similar, although we use the Mcat Foundation kind of platform for our application system. So that's through the AAMC, so the Association of American Medical Colleges. But it's a very similar process where your grade is definitely calculated during the application process. For us, we do have a C grade minimum. And so you would want to take it again, and we do average it out, but there are ways that you can kind of help mitigate that as well. You can do graduate work after you get your bachelor's. You can come back to the community college level and just retake courses. So we see that a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, especially because we know people change in the span of several years. You know, maybe you had life circumstances that happened that made you, you know, it was a difficult season. You couldn't get higher than that grade in that course. And I did also see a question come in about online courses. And so even beyond outside of COVID circumstances, the University of Arizona does allow online prerequisite courses. And so labs are not required. So that's a really huge benefit, not just in this season, but as you're kind of preparing your courses, as you're looking ahead as well.
Awesome. And we are on our way to you next, you and Chip.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, we were on our way to you. So anything else that you want to say summarizing the application process? I know some of we probably have already touched on, but anything that hasn't already been covered in terms of summarizing the application process and what students should expect?
Yeah, I would say it's a very similar process to what my colleagues here have shared. So it is a year-long application process. So very similarly, it opens in about May, early June. And so we would say the earlier you can apply, the better. We do accept applications really up until about October to mid-October. I think this year, October 15th is the final deadline. to submit your primary application. Similarly, if you meet our sort of minimums, then we send you back a secondary application, and then we do interview as well. So as far as looking at the number of people that we accept each year, we do have a class of 100 students that starts annually. So there's just one time that you can enter per year. And we get about 6,000 applications annually. And from that, we narrow it down quite a bit, and we invite about 400 students to interview each year. But being a state institution, things are fairly different. We are going to be looking for our in-state students, and we really try to emphasize that experience. You know, what is it that makes you want to stay in-state, and what do you plan to do with it after you graduate as well? You know, are you trying to make a difference in the Phoenix community, in, you know, the Glendale community? What does that look like for you? So we really are seeking students that are here to make a difference in Arizona.
Awesome. And why don't I just go ahead into the next question, and we can work our way in the other. So what would you suggest for students to help them to be more competitive in the application process?
So, and as we're looking at this question before, I also want to incorporate some of the student questions that are coming in on the chat. So thank you, students, for putting those questions into the chat. One of the questions, because we are talking about what can make the students that are going to be more competitive and to also be more successful in that application process, is if we're looking at a student who may possibly have a lower GPA, a 3.4 below, you know, when we're looking at some of those students, what would you recommend in that with the Mcat score and coupling that with their GPA that would help them? Either, you know, do you recommend, and I know we kind of touched on it before about retaking classes to kind of boost that GPA overall as an average, but maybe possibly what would be a better Mcat score that they may want to look at getting if their GPA may be slightly lower than what they would have wanted it to be at the time of application. And then also, you know, we can come to that question afterward, but I want to go ahead and get this one rolling.
Yeah, so it's really just a judgment call. Sometimes we don't really know until we've got your entire file in front of us. We really do want to look at everything. We want to review your file holistically, and, you know, sometimes you might just need to retake a few courses. Like I said, maybe it doesn't totally adjust your GPA because they're calculating every course, but at least you'll demonstrate to the committee that you've mastered some of the material. Maybe you just need to freshen up on some of your sciences and make them a little bit more current. And you know what? Some people might need to get plugged into a post-bachelor program, a post-bac program, or maybe even a graduate program, like a master's in biomedical sciences. It really just depends on how many sciences you've had in the past, how many science credits, what were your grades. So everyone's going to be a little unique, and they're all going to receive a little different advice. But sometimes you might have to demonstrate that you can master graduate level science coursework through a graduate program. And then maybe not everybody, you know, maybe some people do really well on standardized exams, and they're able to balance their academic side of their application with a strong Mcat score. And then the two areas, of course, that people do have control over, more control. Sometimes it's hard to control that GPA after a while, but you have more control over your service and your experience. So you could always strengthen your application with additional service and experience shadowing.
And Scott, what is the score that you still looking for?
So our average is about a 505. We would say a 504, 503 might be competitive. We've accepted scores as low as 500. Of course, those students demonstrated other areas of strength, you know, within their academics. So, like I said, it's all a balance. So there's ways of balancing between Mcat scores, GPAs, service, and experience.
And then for Midwestern, we are pretty similar to A2 still in what Scott said, in that we take a look at the application as a whole. And we do have a graduate program that is a bit of a feeder into our med school. So if students are struggling very much with the GPA portion, we do have our biomed program in which if they enter and they perform very well and can maintain certain stats, I believe a 3.0 throughout the year, they can at least get an interview with us. And then, of course, you already know the faculty that puts you in our system. They have a bit more confidence in having you know how to get through the med program. So that's one way in terms of GPA. The other is, of course, balancing out the GPA and MCAT. Sometimes one will be higher than the other. Our average MCAT is a 508, but if your GPA tends to lean towards like the lower 3.0 in that 3.0, 3.4 range, getting a higher MCAT within like the 510s or above could help balance that out. And then in terms of other aspects to boost your application, we definitely we don't frown upon gap years as long as the applicants are using the time well. So if you got into work within the field, you got more hospital experience, experience with other physicians, or even within the community in which you help set up organizations, things like that, show leadership, professionalism, anything to showcase your work ethic will definitely help, and we definitely take it to account when looking at applicants. We have a lot of career change students, so it's not uncommon to take a gap year. So that won't be reflected negatively or anything like that. But other than that, we do look at applicants as a whole. So anything that you can kind of show how you would be presented or what you would like to do with your medical degree after you graduate and how you want to contribute to the community, that definitely shows us your dedication and the type of drive that you have, and that plays a part into our selection process too.
Thank you, Jeff. And then I think UA, I think we're back to you, UA.
Perfect.
So when you're talking about the GPA, yeah, we're, again, just like the other two schools said, we're looking at that holistic review. We're looking at those experiences. We're looking at your grades and your personal experiences as well, your professional and your personal experiences. GPA isn't everything. Mcat score isn't everything. We do want to see a well-rounded individual. We want to see that you're exposed to the clinical environment, you're giving back to your community with your community service and your volunteer work, that you are paying attention to yourself and taking care of yourself with extracurricular activities and hobbies and those types of things. So yeah, we are going to look at all of those different aspects of your application, top to bottom, your personal statement. 3.4 really isn't a low GPA. If you look at our incoming class, and we're just looking at the undergraduate degrees, we have someone who had a 2.96 GPA that was accepted, but they did a post-bac or a graduate program, and so they did show an upward trend of, taking care of their grades and focusing on, what that finish line looks like for them. And so that's really what admissions committees want to see. Like you may have messed up in your freshman year, sophomore year in college. You may have took a bad class, but they want to see an upward trend of your GPA moving higher than, and so you don't want to go first to second year really high and then you drop off for your junior and senior year. So again, we're going to look at that holistic application. We're going to look at all those different experiences that you have, and we're going to really take that all into account. So it's not all about the academics and the MCAT score. Yeah, we do have a high MCAT score, at average being a 514. That range breaks down from 497 all the way up to a 523. So.
Yeah. And just to quickly address the competitive kind of aspect too, trying to make yourself more competitive. As I mentioned, we really are looking for those people who want to make a difference in Arizona. And so I think for just speaking very kind of off the cuff, what I'm seeking in an applicant when I'm reading an application is why. Why do they have a desire to do medicine and why in Arizona? Because, we encourage people to apply to like 15 different medical schools when you're considering applying. And so we really want to know is there a specific thing that drives you or that is that really influences your journey? Because honestly, we see a lot of the same applications. It's just like, I just want to be a doctor and I want to help save the world. But what is it about here and now that makes you want to do it? And so I will definitely say that is probably one of the most competitive edges you can have, is really knowing who you are and knowing what your end goal is. Even if you don't know what specialty or anything you want to go into, just having that vision for the future, I think, is so important.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. And I know there was also a question about acceptance rates of the, among the different schools. What is the acceptance rate through UA?
So,
Okay, that's fine. You're on. Go ahead.
Yeah, for AT still, we're going to receive about 6,000 applications for 162 seats. So that's pretty much what the numbers are. But that sounds overwhelming, but believe me, there are definitely ways to allow yourself to stand out. Like I said, if you're getting the shadowing and experience in the service hours, then you're going to stand out. We're going to review your file. We're going to want to interview you. So we'll interview probably about a tenth of that. We'll interview about 600 for the 162 seats. A great way to stand out again is just within your letters of recommendation, which we really value. So don't be overwhelmed by those numbers. Sometimes a lot of those applicants really just aren't hitting the marks, and they got a lot of gaps in their application. So don't be discouraged.
As far as Midwestern, I would second what Scott just said. Don't be discouraged about the numbers as well. We have a similar, about 6,000 applications to fill 250 spots. So, but yeah, some of those students aren't hitting the marks. And we interview, roughly around 1,000 students. So, again, ways to stand out: Mcat, GPA, shadowing, letters of recommendation, and gaining that healthcare experience, like as a scribe, a medical assistant, any type of shadowing, viewing OMM. That is a huge part of our curriculum, is osteopathic manipulation medicine. So if you've seen that or gone through any of that experience yourself, we'd love to hear more about that, and something that contributes then to the interview. And so that's another part of the whole, applicant in general, not only the application, but how you've done in the interview process too. So it kind of goes hand in hand. But yeah, don't get discouraged from those numbers. Do the best that you can by getting involved and staying strong in your academics.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned earlier too, we also get about 6,000 applications for 100 seats. But don't be discouraged, like everyone else has said too, because we actually have a minimum of 50% of our class has to be from Arizona. And so what that essentially means is really 50 out of those seats are reserved for Arizona residents. And that does include our Pathway Scholars program as well, which that's the number one requirement, is that you're from Arizona, and are a current resident of Arizona. So definitely there are spots for our Arizona students, and we definitely would encourage you to apply. I also want to really quickly throw in, I did add our Zoom link to the chat. And so if you're interested in asking us more questions after this, go ahead and take down that information now. Just note there is a password that I pasted under there as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Rachel.
So just to jump in, I know we're talking about, I've heard all of you talk about the clinical hours, or shadowing, or kind of getting involved in the field so that all of your schools can see that dedication from the students to the profession itself. So right now, I know it is difficult, and we did have a student who brought up it's been hard for them to be able to complete some of their volunteer hours, because so many things have closed down, and a lot of those opportunities that they had for shadowing and volunteering have closed down during this time. Do you all have any other creative ways that you might be able to suggest that students might be able to try during times like this? Because I hear, and I think it's pretty clear that the clinical, or at least some kind of volunteer, or just those hours in the profession, are important to that overall application the student submits. Just if there's any suggestions that you each may be able to give to the students that might help during this time.
Yeah, the good news is that we're all going through it. So in terms of the competition, all the other applicants are dealing with the same issues. So there is like for us in our secondary application, you'll be able to specifically address that issue in your secondary application, how the virus has negatively impacted your application. So feel free to share that. That's fine. Otherwise, we've become a lot more, I guess, laxed or liberal in what we consider service or even shadowing. Of course, we're accepting virtual shadowing. So we've kind of adjusted too because we understand how hard it is out there. Some things that some schools didn't necessarily consider. Healthcare hours, we understand that applicants are scraping to get whatever they can. So we're trying to help them out, meet them in the middle, and we're basically counting virtually anything that deals with professionals and with patients.
Awesome.
And then for the Western, we're in the same boat. We've gotten a lot of feedback from students, and a lot of them, they are looking into virtual shadowing or telemedicine. So we will definitely accept those. Some students have gone back to people they shadowed before COVID hit, and those doctors seem pretty good at either helping out on writing the letters of recommendation or offering some feedback or maybe getting them in touch with other hospitals or doctors who would allow the telemedicine or shadowing virtually. Or some hospitals are able to offer some volunteer spots in a low risk area where they kind of just help get with the setup or move things around, but they're still within the realm of watching how COVID is being managed. So we will take those experiences as well.
Thank you, Jess.
Definitely. And similarly, we're right there in the same boat. But one thing I would add to that is that we really are looking for a balanced applicant too. So yes, clinical is of the utmost importance, but we're also looking for research, for volunteer service, for leadership, and also for your extracurricular growth as a student as well. And so, honestly, this is a great time to explore some of those other things that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to do. We have a student who, became an Mcat tutor after they took it. And that was one of the ways that they, were able to serve other students. And that's a great thing that you can do virtually that you don't have to be in a clinical environment to do, obviously. And so we really are looking for that holistic review of all those different experiences. And we do know that, hopefully this will end eventually and things will return to a more normal pace. I'm not saying that will be anytime sooner, that we know exactly what that time frame looks like, but be creative in those experiences and be open to building up other aspects of your application as well.
Yeah, definitely understand that your application process and your experiences are not a checklist. It really is just finding those things that you're passionate about and getting involved with those things that you're really passionate about, because when you do that, whatever those experiences may be, it's going to be easy for you to get a lot of hours in doing it. So if it's volunteering, if it's coaching sports, if it's tutoring others, whatever that might be, get involved with those. And like Rachel said, now's a great opportunity. Everyone's kind of in the same boat, not being able to get clinical experience, or they're being very creative with how they're getting their clinical experience. So really explore those other options, but build up all those different experiences for you. And then, like some of the other schools had mentioned, we also have a secondary question that asks how COVID has impacted you, your experiences during this time. And this isn't just going to be like for this application cycle. This is probably going to affect a couple of application cycles. And so all medical schools across the country are kind of dealing with this same thing and trying to figure out how these numbers are going to be affected with all the applications coming in. And it's not just their experience, it's affecting MCATs, it's affecting pretty much everything. So just keep that in mind, that all medical schools are trying to figure this all out, but also are dealing with it in at the same time as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Chip. And Rachel, you were just mentioning research, and we haven't really shared yet. I'll give kind of like let everyone kind of catch their breath while I talk for just a few minutes to make sure that students know that GCC has a partnership program with Western New Mexico University and it's a concurrent enrollment program that leads to the bachelor's, a BS in cell and molecular biology. And there's a number of, benefits to the program. And one, as Rachel was mentioning, research, is that it's more research-based, and we can talk a little bit about how, that can help students as well. But some of the other benefits, obviously some things are a little different right now due to COVID, but normally when classes are, in session and whatever classes are going to be, in person, they're happening on the GCC campus. So even though it's a bachelor's degree from Western New Mexico University, those classes that are in person are on our campus. Students don't have to travel to Western New Mexico. And it's an 80-40 program as well, which means that students can bring in up to 80 units from GCC, which helps them to keep their costs down. Plus, Western is also a more affordable tuition rate. So, you get a lot of the continuing benefits of a community college: smaller class size, convenience, the familiar faculty, traveling in a cohort of students. And we are adding an additional virtual information session, probably the following Thursday. So not this week, but next Thursday. So that students who want to know more, we can get a little bit more in depth, because we didn't want to take too much time away from our presenters. But we do want students to know that, if they haven't yet decided where they want to get their bachelor's from, come and talk with us, and we're happy to answer questions, because, that may be a good opportunity. And like I said, I'm also into helping students to keep their costs down, okay, as well as all those other benefits. So let's see.
So actually, I'm thinking at this point, I think it would be a great opportunity to jump into the interview. I've heard you all mention that, as part of that process of getting into med school in general. And I know, for some students, the interview piece is one thing that they either don't realize that they end up having to do for med school. Everybody thinks about that Mcat score and their GPA and getting their clinical hours and putting that all together. But what they don't realize is there's also an interview component to the process. And so I was hoping maybe each of you could speak to that, how you conduct the interviews at your school, and then also, if there's any, and maybe that'll be like a follow-up, is just what are some helpful advice, during those interviews. So if we could start there, just to kind of talk about your interview process for your institution.
Yeah, so of course right now we're just doing it virtually through Zoom. So applicants are going to meet with about 3 different instructors, and the instructors will spend about 20 minutes to 30 minutes with the students each. And, they really just want to gauge their understanding of what they're about to get themselves into. They really want to hear your understanding, passion. We don't mean passion like coming in with pom-poms or anything like that. We mean like, is this really something that you know what you're getting yourself into? Do you have a great understanding of the profession itself, the kind of hard work that you're about to put yourself through for the next 4 years? We really just want that to kind of come through the computer screen, I guess. But hopefully we'll get back to normal. When we get back to normal, we'll have you come on campus. It'll be a half a day, but it'll feel like a full day. We'll treat you to lunch. You'll get to spend time with our student ambassadors. Our interview process is a little bit more creative. We have you do some group activity. We sit through some presentations. And then you also get to do some MMIs. Those are multiple mini interviews, or multiple interviews. I've heard it both ways. But basically, we do 2 types. One is it's kind of like speed dating. You sit down, somebody asks you a question, you got 2 or 3 minutes to answer, then you move on to the next person, they ask you a question, you do that about 9 times. And then the other MMI is more like role playing. You'll actually have someone on the speaker. Well, first you'll read a scenario, tell you what you are, who you are, and what the situation is on the other side of the door. a speaker will tell you to enter the exam room, and then you'll basically be role playing for about 5 minutes. We'll do that about 3 times. So what advice? I mean, not to be cliche, but be yourself, right? Not only are we looking for the right fit for our school, we should be the right fit for you. So you might as well be yourself. If you don't like what's going on, then we're not the right fit for you. But we hope that we can fill our class with students that share the same interests and passions as we do, like I said before.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott.
With Midwestern, we tend to do a panel interview, and it's a blind interview. So the interviewers, they don't know your academic background or anything. All they have is your CV and your supplemental, which explains any situations or anything that may have been of interest. And it'll usually be one applicant with 2 to 3 people. They will be comprised of a faculty member, one of our physicians in the field, and then possibly a current student. And the interview portion usually only lasts about half an hour. On WebEx, which is how we're going to do it this year, we'll have little breakout sessions so that students can get an idea of our campus, our curriculum. They'll have a one-on-one session with our student ambassadors where they can ask any questions that they'd like. And then we'll go over any of the financial aid and all the other aspects that come along post-acceptance. If it were on campus, we would do campus tours. We treat you guys to lunch. You will get an idea of our clinics, our simulation centers, and kind of get an idea of what our OMM lab looks like, a little more interactive. But we're just kind of making do. But yes, that'll be the setup of interviews. For us will be the WebEx, but it'll still maintain that panel style, and it'll still be a blind interview. In regards to what they usually look for or ask, once we get you guys here, they're more looking for your personality and how, so they may ask more behavior type questions on how you would handle a situation, what your favorite hobbies might be, and how you balance time. So it can kind of vary. They just want to get an idea of your personality and sort of how you fit into what our model is. So definitely read up on what we look for in applicants and what our drive is, and be able to incorporate that and how you would fit into that type of model and if it fits you as well. And then I'll hand it over to Liz for the do's and don'ts tips that she has.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. So as far as like interview style, definitely dress professionally. That is a key. So, treat it like a job interview, like, dress professionally. And this gives you a good, reason to go out and buy a suit if you'd like. But again, treat it as a job interview and practice. You know your resume, you're the best person to advocate for yourself. So don't, hold back, but also, as Scott said, be yourself. And if we're not the best fit, there's another school out there that is. A couple of don'ts. Don't overdo attempts to impress. Again, be yourself. And research the school before you go into it for that interview. So know more about the history, know what you like about the school, have some questions prepared. So don't just go in all willy-nilly, have some things prepared. And then if you opt out of going into that interview, please call that school. No call, no shows are awful. So just, be mindful of everyone's time with that and all of the logistics behind the scenes with the schools. So definitely, if you're not going to show up, give them a courtesy call. We understand on our side, but just having that. And then, of course, don't act unprofessional. The whole day is created as an interview. Even at lunch, when you're with students, you're still on stage for an interview. So just carrying that demeanor all day So keep that going. But yeah, so those are a couple of good key points for sure.
Good advice.
Perfect. And we typically use a multiple mini interview model in person with about 10 stations. But due to COVID, we are moving the entire cycle to an online platform called VITA, which is actually through the Association of American Medical Colleges. And VITA it's a video interview tool. There's 6 questions this year. There may be more in future cycles, but that's okay. And you essentially get to pre-record interviews, and that actually goes for all allopathic schools that are participating in this tool. And so it's kind of cool because you don't have to go to 12 different schools that you got invited to interview at. Instead, you would actually use the same pre-recorded interview for that. The one thing I wanted to say is that for both in-person interviews and in kind of this COVID video interview kind of world, one thing to note is that you're not going to be asked questions like, tell us about a time when this. It's going to be very much like, imagine this scenario. What would you do in this imagined scenario? And so the reason I bring that up is because you don't necessarily have to have all the life experience in the whole wide world. What they're really going to be testing you on is key characteristics like resilience, like how resilient of a person are you? How selfless are you? We're really looking for leaders who are selfless, who are altruistic, who know that there's a lot of sacrifices ahead, but are willing to do it for the sake of others. So that's going to be a huge theme as you're interviewing, both with us in person or over video interviews.
Yeah, they're also going to look at how you communicate with others, and that's one of the things that the multiple mini interview process looks for, because now you're interacting with 10 different people, and so it's really, it gives us an opportunity to really see, were you able to communicate your message with 10 different people, and how did they take that message each time? And so that's why we find the multiple mini interview process to be very helpful for us. Some tips for preparing for the interviews: practice. Definitely sit down and practice with other people. If you have weird things that you might do when you're nervous, try to break those habits, make eye contact, smile, but don't do it to where it's like creepy. Blink, don't blink too much. If you have sweaty hands, keep a napkin in your pocket so that you can wipe that off before you shake their hands. You want to do stuff like that because you don't want those types of things to stand out in your interview. Like, all I remember about that guy was his hands were super sweaty. I don't even remember what he said past that. So definitely look at all those different things and work on some of those issues that you might have leading into, like if you're rocking in your chair, don't do that. But yeah, definitely work with other people and practice your ability to communicate with others.
Awesome. Thanks, Chip. Okay. We touched on the MCAT. So can you tell students, and I guess we'll go back to the beginning to AT Still, to Scott, what to expect in the MCAT and what scores are you looking for?
Yeah, so they're broken up into different scores. So we're trying to look for students that are around 125 and all the different scores in the components, so especially through in the biology section. We understand that the biochem and the anatomy section seem to be the toughest areas. We recommend that students take their biochem course and their anatomy course before they attempt to take the MCAT. Multiple MCATs don't necessarily look bad as long as you're improving. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. Feel free to retake if you need to. Otherwise, it's not the be-all, end-all. We don't necessarily judge anybody's academic capabilities based off of a test necessarily. We really just value it because you have to pass a standardized test to become a doctor, right? So we want to make sure that you're not going to struggle with standardized tests in general. So we use that as a gauge to get you in. But otherwise, feel free to use those resources out there. There are classes for you. And it is important. So try to treat it as something that is important and ask for help if you need it.
Awesome. And Liz and Jeff?
Yes. So for Midwestern, roughly around a 508. As Scott said too, that stands with us. Take it as many times as you need to. we do heavily look at the MCAT, and it just varies. Every cycle is so different. You know, one year it could be a 506, one year is, and we keep seeing an increase over time with the MCAT getting just stronger, with stronger applicants. So again, this cycle is a 508 on average, but we've accepted like a 503, a 504, and then all the way up. So yeah, you know, and utilize those resources, go in feeling confident and comfortable with that, and give yourself that, I guess, that time to study, but then that time to take the exam and then get it submitted. I guess with us, you can submit your application with having a pending MCAT, but again, we won't be able to review that application until we see your MCAT as a complete package. So you kind of want to time it right with submitting your application and then getting your MCAT in. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Thank you. And Rachel or Chip?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned before, like our average MCAT score is a 514, and it's slowly crept up each year. I think when I started it, the average test MCAT score was a 512. Last year was a 513, and now we're at a 514. But it's hard because, like Scott was saying, it is a standardized test, and you are going to have to pass standardized tests through medical school, and that's why we look at that. But it is not the end-all, be-all. If you do retake the exam, make sure that you study for it. Make sure that you prepare well for it, because you don't want to see a downward trend in that score. You don't want to get the same score. We do get to see all the different times that you took the test, but we also don't want to see that you've taken the exam 8 times to try to get a good score. So definitely focus on that. One of the things that we've learned with all of our medical students is, again, like Scott had said, take the MCAT after you've taken biochemistry and physiology and all the prerequisite coursework for medical school. Otherwise, you're going to be going into the test blindly, trying to guess on it, and that's not going to look good for you. So definitely be prepared for that. A lot of our students have taken a gap year and spent time working on their experiences and actually just focusing on that MCAT score. So gap years are not a bad thing. 65% of our class took a gap year last year prior to applying, and so it is something that can be recommended. But again, it's on your own timeline. But you definitely want to set time aside to focus on studying for that MCAT, because it is a long exam, and it's going to be difficult if you go in unprepared.
Definitely. And I would just add to, consider some of your options as far as preparing for the MCAT as well. We know, we can't just blindly say, sure, everybody can afford, the $1,000 prep courses. I know I can't, but at the same time, there are ways and means that you can get some of those great resources for free or reduced cost. So definitely ask around. Don't be shy about it. Like, ask all of the people that you know that are applying to medical school or are in medical school, not to totally advertise a different school, but if you choose to transfer to Arizona State, they do have some options that are really helpful. And so we know we've seen a lot of our students utilize some of those resources. So don't be shy about it.
And that is definitely something that I do want to stress to the students. As you're looking for some of those types of resources, please know that there are numerous organizations that are out there to help students with this exact type of thing. And for our students that are Native American students, a lot of your tribes will help to pay for those prep courses for you to take your MCAT test. So please utilize whatever you might have at your disposal and start to think outside of the box. That's one of the things that we try to do here with STEM Connect. If you're a GCC student, we do try to help you to identify some of those resources that will start to help you with that type of thing to prepare. Now, mind you, I know some of you had questions about when you should be looking to apply and when you should be looking to get prepared for this. And as most of the schools have already stated, the process usually takes about a year. So please keep that in mind as well in terms of your timeline. about when you're going to be applying for your med school, and that where that process lies in your undergrad, so typically at the beginning of your senior year of your undergrad, and then also timing that with if you want to start prepping for the MCAT itself. So, just keep all of those things in mind. And that was one of the follow-up questions I was going to ask you, is if you do allow for the students to start that application process with a pending MCAT score, and when, like what exactly, how long will you hold an application until you receive that score in that process, if you could give that advice?
Yeah, as it turns out, we do have to wait for that Mcat score before we could fully review the file. Unfortunately, it just is that important for us. All right.
And same for Midwestern. So applicants, if you guys have everything kind of ready to go, definitely submit that ahead of time, just because it takes almost like 3 weeks to review it and then get it to us. If we already have it in-house, by the time we get your MCAT, we can process it right away. I would try to take the MCAT no later than like the October, November time. That's when the applications get a little bit more competitive. It is rolling admission. Right now, there are a lot of MCAT delays, so we're definitely being understanding of it and still taking a look at the rest of your application while the MCAT's on hold, but we won't make any decisions for invite yet. Once the MCAT comes in, we can finish the review and then process it right away. So submitting earlier still helps you in that time frame then. And then as far as the application planning, I think most schools might be rolling admission, but always try to apply within the first 3 months. I think that's a pretty good window to maintain competitiveness. And it also gives you time for feedback. So if you get a decision back early because you're missing something, you have still like 2 semesters or 3 quarters to get a course finished or a course retaken and updated. So earlier the better in both senses.
For the U of A, normally we would hold your application until we receive an MCAT score. But in today's world, we've actually made an adjustment. So you can actually go through the screening and review process, but you will not be invited to interview until we get that score. So we typically, like the other schools, we hope that you've taken the MCAT prior to even starting your application would be ideal. But we will accept it. So if the application opens in June, we'll accept scores through September, like if you're in that current cycle. Hopefully that makes sense. We can talk more about that.
We have just a couple more questions to ask, but meanwhile, if students who are on have additional questions, now is a great time to start putting them in. So we'll go back to AT still, and I think we touched on this a little bit, but we can go into a little bit more of the strengths of your program.
I'm sorry, did you say the strength of the program?
Yes.
Yeah, so like I said, 100% match residency above national average in terms of national test scores. Otherwise, yeah, we do present our curriculum in a unique kind of a way in our first year. We separate our curriculum by systems-based, and then we present it in a schematic kind of a way, in the sense of like we use I don't know, like a type of algorithm where we look at there's been enough history, enough education, enough history in medicine to understand that a patient will probably come to you in one of 120 different ways. We literally take a case study at every single one of those 120 different ways, and we go through all the different sciences. So if you were to imagine like a flow chart, we'll put headaches or, I don't know, put seizures up at the top. We got a question to ask. Is this person epileptic or are they not? And then that'll branch off, and then we got to drill down and find out what's going on with these seizures. Next question is this person an adult or a child? And then it branches off from there. And we'll go through all the different, so it's a unique kind of a way of learning. Like I said, we send you to your rotation site in your second year with your cohort. So you do have to be a flexible kind of a learner. And and get your hands-on med skills training done at your rotation site and continue your lectures through podcasts at one of our 16 locations all across America. But those are the things that make us really proud of our program so far.
Awesome.
And then for Midwestern, so our program, we're pretty good at readjusting for students. So like with this year, they had the merger, and we readjust our curriculum to make sure they were prepared for both COMLEX, which is the boards for the DO, and then the USMLE, which is the boards for the allopathic. But now with the mergers, we want to make sure that they can take both and successfully pass. So our pass rate for the past year was a 96% pass for the COMLEX, and then we had a 97% pass rate for the USMLE. So our students are very prepared in that way, in that we make sure that they are competitive when applying to residency. We also do what we call as auditions. So in your fourth year, each student is set up with a specific coordinator who will help them get about 4 to 5 audition rotations, in which they basically have a 4-week interview with different residency programs that they would like to attend. And most often, they usually match with one of those programs. You get the hands-on experience, you get the exposure for the 4 weeks, you demonstrate your skills to them in person. So in that sense, we definitely help with that. Curriculum-wise, we integrate a lot of our curriculum with some of the other healthcare professions we have on campus. So our students have a good idea and a variety of how other healthcare professions help them as well. So networking-wise, you have a good network once you graduate. You have a wide variety of knowledge of other factors that may come into play with your patient. And then specialty-wise, we match in a variety of specialties, so it's not just osteopathic focus. We have students that go into surgery, anesthesia, ophthalmology, as well as the family medicine, internal medicine. So we have a wide variety, and we make sure that our students are knowledgeable in everything. And that is done through our 3rd and 4th year core rotation. So everyone will get a solid core rotation within primary care and subspecialties and surgery.
Awesome. Rachel or Chip?
Sure. So we have our curriculum. I won't do the same phrase of we're really unique in what we do. No, but we actually start our clinical experience in the first year. So similarly to the other schools here, we have the opportunity to serve at local clinics, to really get our hands really into medicine from the very beginning, which is fantastic. And one of the kind of things that's unique about us is we actually have a 4-year project that we do. So even if you're not even if you don't feel like you're really research minded, that's okay. It takes something that you're interested in, and then you develop it with the help of a mentor throughout the full 4 years. And that really helps set you apart as you're looking at different residencies as well. So if you're into women's health and you want to talk about that, you're going to get paired with a mentor who can walk you through that, and you can really develop a really quality product. And that really helps, how do I say, not sell yourself, but essentially when you are in those interviews for your residencies, you can say, this is what I care about. This is what I want to focus on in the future. And it's okay, even if you don't know what that looks like when you first enter medical school, not a problem at all. But your mentor will help you really kind of narrow that down as well. And then one other thing that I would be remiss if I didn't bring up too is we have what's called the Primary Care Physician Scholarship Program. And that's a mouthful, but what that is if you are willing to serve in a primary care capacity in Arizona after you graduate, you can actually get full tuition covered for the number of years that you're willing to serve. So if you want to serve for 4 years after school, perfect, you get full free tuition for 4 years. So that's a huge deal if you're interested in primary care, including kind of some of those other specialties that can kind of fall within that too. So that includes geriatric, that includes family medicine, and a lot of other things that we kind of have a pretty broad definition of primary care. So Chip, is there anything else you want to add about kind of unique things about us?
I think one of the things that is unique for us is that all of our students, when they come onto campus, they're assigned a learning specialist. And those learning specialists are designed to work with the students to specifically help them figure out what way they learn best and to provide them with resources to help them retain that information that they're learning through medical school, because typically the way you learn in your undergraduate is going to be a little bit different than how you learn in medical school, because you kind of have to remember everything throughout medical school. And so our learning specialists are there to work with your faculty members and your tutors to make sure that you are getting the information that you need and retaining that information throughout. So that's something that's pretty unique to us as well.
Okay. And we had a question that was specific to UA. Let's see. Been looking into UA, and one thing on my mind is looking at different schools from Phoenix and Tucson. Are the residency programs available at both campuses?
Perfect. Do you mean the different kind of rotations that you do, or the actual residencies? Because residency would be after you complete the MD degree.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It was a student question, not my own question, so I'm trying to interpret what was intended.
I would just throw out, I'm going to address it from the point of rotations, just because I think at this point that might be what you're worried about. So Tucson and Phoenix are actually very different. That is one of the big differences between our two schools. So Tucson actually has a teaching hospital on campus, which is fantastic because you are super close and you can just literally walk across the street. That's awesome. But one of the things that Phoenix does, so we actually have 9 different major clinical partners and then hundreds of other smaller sites that we can send you to. But those main clinical partners, you can do rotations at Phoenix Children's, you can do it at the VA, you can do it at the county hospital. So you really have a really incredible opportunity to really get familiar with those different systems. And the beauty of that too is that after you graduate, then you can walk into one of those kind of hospitals and have that confidence that you know that charting system, you know that kind of the format of that hospital. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see, going back to, we'll go back to HU still and go back around. The question was, do HU still, Midwestern, and UA accept military scholarships?
Yeah, absolutely. We're a military-friendly school, and we'll accept military scholarships. We'll accept any scholarships. So we also have our own scholarships. Feel free to visit our scholarship page.
Same for Midwestern, we do accept military. We actually have a lot of military students. And yeah, I'd invite you to check out our scholarship page. We have just a lot of students that use financial aid, but also any outside scholarships, just a simple Google search, you can apply that. Anything helps. So definitely consider that. We do also have like a unique scholarship. So we have what's called Omm Scholars. So a lot of schools have fellows. So it's just another, term for it, but it's technically a 5-year. So you would apply then your 2nd year and then become a scholar during your 3rd, 4th, and 5th year. So it is an OMM type scholarship. So that is huge. A lot of it is teaching. You're helping teach the class, more academics involved, research. You'll have your rotations, and Jess can kind of speak on that, would kind of consist more on OMM in our clinic across the street. So we stay mostly local. But the thing is, your 3rd, 4th, and 5th year are paid for at that. So, so there are options. We only see 3 scholars per class, so it is very competitive, but a lot of awesome benefit from that as well. So, get creative. These are some strange times, but you can definitely kind of seek outside scholarships too.
Rachel, tip?
As far as military scholarships, absolutely.
All right. And then what I'll do is I'm going to kind of combine the next 2 questions, which was, one was going to be my last question, but first there was a student question. to ask to each is to talk about how each of your schools promote diversity in the campus. And we'll go back to AT still. And then AT still, as you wrap up, can you also just let students know, like from here, if they want to know more, are you, like some of them, like I know UA is doing the virtual tabling. If AT still is doing that, or you have some other information session, or how students should get in touch with you.
Yeah, so our diversity and inclusion department is working overtime right now. They're in full gear, so getting our word out, doing outreach events, and but you know what? I'll say our own students are probably our best ambassadors right now with the clubs and the organizations that we have. The way that they go back to their undergrad schools. So meeting diversity goals is always a top priority for AT Still University. Again, a major component of the application is your service hours. What kind of history do you have with your service, and then of course moving forward with all of your clinical rotations are going to take place in community health centers. So you'll continue serving the underserved as you're a student here. In terms of like communicating with us, I recommend going to our website and just simply filling out a contact form. When you do that, you're on our list. If we have like an event, an open house, or an information session, you're going to get that information. You all know how competitive we are. We're not going to hound you with a bunch of emails that are unnecessary. We're only going to feed you information that is necessary, and that is to stay in touch with us. If you use our generic email or phone numbers, they're going to go to a real person just like me. So feel free to just go to our website, hit that contact button, and you'll get your questions answered right away. And I'll go ahead and leave my information in the chat now.
Awesome.
And then for our school, we do have a task force that has been sort of working on bringing more diversity to the campus. We do have a lot of international students as well as taking from different communities around. And a lot of our rotations and club events also integrate into a lot of the community areas. So I think with the students and our faculty members, they've been coming together to sort of bring a bit more awareness, cultural awareness, and as well as cultural interaction, because we do know that when we go onto an Indian reservation, there are different ways to approach those patients versus ones that are here locally. So we're bringing more awareness in that sense. I believe they are trying to initiate some scholarships. So keep an eye out for our website. That portion is new, so I'm not exactly sure what the details are, but there will be some new ones coming on board, so just make sure to keep checking in. And then we're also doing a bit more integration into the application part as well. So we're taking into account different backgrounds, any struggles that students have gone through, kind of different stories that we can sort of bring to light and take into account of how they got to where they are now from where they've been. So definitely those are there. And then as far as contact-wise, we will also put our contact in the chat if you have any specific questions that come up or want to have your application sort of looked at for any improvements or areas of improvement. Like AT Still, when you send it to us, one of our counselors will come back to you or email you and sort of work with you on that as
well. Awesome.
Yeah, as far as diversity goes at the University of Arizona, we have really been focusing on listening more because we have a lot of programs, but one thing we really want to change going forward is listening to our students. And so we've actually been having these sort of town halls where it's not just the faculty or staff speaking to students, but actually the students leading those things. And we have them individually by years and also in different interest groups as well. And then we also have really cool opportunities where community mentors will come in and they'll have dinner specific to whether that's your racial or ethnic community, as well as, you know, for LGBTQIA kind of community members as well. We have mentors who are just able to share about their own experiences in medicine, and then and offer those resources, because that's a lot better than what we could ever do kind of as an institution. And so that's something that we're really focusing on. And like Jessica was saying, we also have scholarships that both are already in place and more that are being developed as well, depending on your different affiliations.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel.
Real quick, also our Office of Diversity and Inclusion is built into our curriculum top to bottom throughout the 4 years of medical school. And so it's not just they're out recruiting and working with certain departments, it's literally built into the curriculum throughout the 4 years.
Yeah, and I just want to tag onto that too. We really are about the whole, like, we try to take feedback immediately from students and apply it immediately to the next year. And so if not even earlier than that as well. So for instance, one thing that we had discussed was, you know, in our anatomy labs, how can we have a more diverse kind of our different donors? You know, are we having a diverse set of donors? Because that's a huge part of being able to recognize different diseases and how they sort of present in different skin tones and different kind of different ethnicities. And so that's a huge, huge thing that we need to start literally from the ground up. And I'm really proud that we act on that very quickly.
Any other questions from anyone that's on? Elena, did you have any other questions or comments you wanted to make?
No, I just wanted to thank all of you for providing all of this wonderful information. We certainly appreciate it, and the students appreciate it, and we try to field questions as much as we possibly can, but obviously we're not the subject matter experts, so it's great to be able to have you all on to be able to provide a lot of that detailed information. So I do appreciate you putting your contact information into the chat, and also just so the students know, if for any reason you don't get to record that or write that down, you can always contact us directly, and then we can also provide you with some of our contact information for all of these representatives as well. And if there are any other questions, students, as you think of them, as you go on, please don't hesitate to reach out either to the STEM Connect office or to, obviously, all of our representatives here today. That's what we're here for. We're here for resources. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody and everybody who attended today.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and thanks to all of our guests who came to provide information.
All right. So just for those students, I know the U of A will be tabling after this meeting, so if you are interested in continuing the conversation with the U of A representatives, they did provide that information in the chat. All right, and that concludes today's session. Thank you so much for having a successful event. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Hey.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.